Southern Fried True Crime covers cases that are not suitable for young listeners, and there may also be some explicit language used. Listener discretion is advised. The morning of December 4th, 2004 in Beaufort, Georgia should have been forgettable. Like any other Saturday morning in this quaint suburban town, many of Beaufort's residents worked in Atlanta during the week. When Kelly Como woke up that day, she probably thought it would be an easy Saturday. Cereal and cartoons for her daughter, maybe errands later. The weekend stretched before her with easy possibilities. Until someone rang the doorbell, over and over again. When Kelly opened her front door at 7:30 a.m., she was shocked. It was a young boy, dressed only in his underwear. He was red-faced, crying and screaming. Kelly immediately recognized the sandy-haired boy. He was 7-year-old Barton Corbin, the eldest of 2 sons of the Corbin family, who lived across the street in a brick 2-story home. Kelly knew the Corbins well. The mother of the family, Jennifer, was a preschool teacher for the Sugar Hill United Methodist Church, and the father of the family, Bart, was a dentist. When Bart and Jennifer bought the house in 1999, Kelly and her husband Steve had become incredibly close with them. So close, in fact, the Comos changed their will. In the event of the Comos' deaths, Bart and Jennifer would take over their estate and custody of their children. But Jennifer and Bart were nowhere to be seen. Just little Dalton. And the first words out of his mouth were, "My daddy shot my mommy." For years, lawyers, police officers, and the Corbin family would debate this statement, that Bart Corbin had shot Jennifer Corbin. And in the process of determining this truth, many other truths would also be revealed. Welcome to episode 200, The Murders of Jennifer Corbin and Dolly Hearn. Jennifer Monique Barber Corbin was born January 25th, 1971 in Bowling Green, Kentucky, to parents Narda and Max Barber. Jennifer was the middle child of 3. Her sister Rogel was the oldest, and Heather was the youngest. At some point, the Barbers moved from Kentucky. It appears they spent some time in North Carolina before settling in Georgia. Although we don't have much information about Jennifer's childhood, future events will show that the Barbers were a really close-knit family. Jennifer's sister Heather later described Jennifer as easygoing and a great listener. She could make friends with almost anyone, and she was fun to be around. You always knew that she would be there for you. Jennifer was also known to be a creative soul, a free spirit. After graduating from high school, she attended the Savannah College of Art and Design. According to the Atlanta Constitution, she seriously considered becoming a photographer. When Jennifer left college before graduating, she moved to Gwinnett County, Georgia. She had family there. Around this time, which would have been in the early to mid-90s, Jennifer was working at Barnacle's Oyster Bar in Duluth as a waitress. The higher-ups at the bar saw Jennifer's potential for leadership right away. She was quickly promoted to shift manager. Overall, it was a good gig for Jennifer. Most of the customers were nice. They were always happy to see Jennifer's dazzling smile. One customer in particular was especially nice, and that was Barton Corbin, who went by Bart. And Bart was a regular at Barnacle's because his brother Robert worked there as a bouncer. And Bart was also a regular at Barnacle's because his brother Robert had mentioned, "Hey, this really cute blonde works here. You should stop by." Even though Bart was 8 years older than 20-something Jennifer, he was very handsome. 6'3", slim, with brown hair and brown eyes. And it wasn't just Bart Corbin. He was Dr. Bart Corbin, a dentist, a full-grown man who had his life together, who was charming and obviously interested in Jennifer. So Bart and Jennifer began dating, and at first, things were peachy. When Jennifer brought Bart home to her family, everything went swimmingly. Jennifer's parents and sisters could tell that Bart was clearly infatuated with Jennifer. And even though there was a bit of an age gap, the Barbers still decided to like Bart. After all, he was smart and funny. Jennifer's sister Heather told NBC News, "He's got a very quick wit, and people I think are drawn to that. If you know him, crack on him, he has a crack that's 5 times better than yours." And Bart was always around. According to Jennifer's father Max in interviews with NBC News, "We loved Bart Corbin. He came into the family very quickly. He did a lot of traveling with us, vacations. He spent most of his weekends with us." So Jennifer's family approved. They thought Bart was a good match for their free-spirited daughter. He brought her down to earth, which they appreciated, though Jennifer's father Max told the Atlanta Constitution that he was never comfortable with how much Bart swore. On September 1st, 1996, 32-year-old Bart and 25-year-old Jennifer were married. It was, according to the Atlanta Constitution, a spectacular garden ceremony. The bridesmaids carried red roses and wore stunning black and white gowns. But the hem of Jennifer's beautiful white dress did get stained with red Georgia clay. Of course, that didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the union of 2 adults who were happy and in love, and already anticipating the birth of their first child. 7 months later, on April 3rd, 1997, Jennifer gave birth to her first son, Dalton. 2 years after Dalton was born, around 1999, Jennifer and Bart had another son named Dylan. At this point, their relationship and family was experiencing a roller coaster of ups and downs. On the one hand, Jennifer adored her family. She loved being a mom. According to her sister Heather in interviews with NBC News, she was born to be a mom, and when she became a mom, she did it 110%. She became Miss PTA, the SUV-driving, baseball-toting supermom. But on the other hand, Bart was getting more and more difficult for Jennifer to handle. On the outside, he appeared to be as devoted as Jennifer, a super dad to her super mom. He coached the kids' sports. He took smiling photos with the family. But Jennifer complained to her father, Max, that Bart could be harsh with her. He would get mad, call her names, and yell. And as the boys got older, Bart would yell at them too. He held his sons to high standards, incredibly high, as in impossible to attain. Jennifer's sister Heather remembered that once Bart screamed at one of the boys during a Little League game. Bart called his own son a loser and an idiot, in public and at full volume. On a different occasion, he berated his children so furiously that Jennifer's dad, Max, stepped in. Max told Bart he had to stop cussing at his own kids. According to Jennifer's sister Heather, one minute he is happy-go-lucky, the next minute it's just like he goes into a rage. But things weren't all bad. Bart made good money as a dentist, and because of that, they had a beautiful large home. Jennifer was able to be a full-time mom. She just worked part-time at her church's preschool, and honestly, that seemed like it was more for fun than anything else. Bart was able to take Jennifer and the kids on lavish vacations. They went to Europe. They took a Caribbean cruise. Depending on your personal views on money, maybe Bart's high-paying job doesn't seem like a good enough reason to stay with him. And that's fair, but it is a reason that Jennifer might have considered staying with him. And I'm sure there were good moments in the Corbin household too. Moments where Bart wasn't raising his voice or criticizing, where the family was cuddled on the couch watching a movie, or happily eating dinner while telling stories from their day. That's how all relationships go, even toxic ones. The good moments can be really, really good, even when the bad ones are really, really bad. And Bart and Jennifer weren't oblivious to their relationship troubles either. According to Jennifer's family, marriage counseling had been brought up. But during Thanksgiving of 2004, things turned south for the Corbin family in a big way. At that point, marriage counseling was not going to save this marriage. Thursday, November 25th, 2004 was Thanksgiving Day. Bart, Jennifer, and their 2 sons were at Heather's house to celebrate. At this time, Bart and Jennifer had been married for about 8 years. Their sons were ages 7 and 5. Bart was 40 years old and Jennifer was 33. And to put it mildly, things were not going well for Bart and Jennifer. He had been cheating on her for a long time. He had actually started a relationship with a woman before he had even married Jennifer, and he had continued that same relationship during his marriage. It's unclear if Jennifer knew about the affair. Meanwhile, Jennifer was also kind of cheating on Bart. She had recently started having an online relationship with a man named Chris from Missouri. At least, that's what this person told Jennifer. In reality, it was actually a woman named Anita. Jennifer was being catfished. When she found out that her online romantic partner was a woman, she was angry, at first. But eventually, she accepted it and continued to communicate with Anita. Around this time, Jennifer shared with her mother, Narda, that she no longer wanted to be married to Bart. She was frustrated with his constant anger towards her and the boys. According to Narda, as reported by NBC News, Jennifer said, "I am ready to leave and I'm ready to get on with my life." While we're unsure if Jennifer knew about Bart's cheating, Bart definitely knew about Jennifer's cheating. And it all came to a head during this Thanksgiving. During the festivities, Jennifer's family noticed that Bart was acting strange. He spent a lot of time in a room by himself. He wouldn't engage in conversation. For a man who was known for being the center of attention and his ability to tell a funny story, this must have stood out to everyone. Suddenly, at 6 p.m. sharp, Bart wanted to leave. According to the Atlanta Constitution, Dalton and Dylan protested. But Jennifer quickly agreed and hurried the boys into the car. When Bart and Jennifer got into the car, he began screaming at her. He was angry about her online relationship with Anita. He called her a slut in front of their children, who were both terrified in the back seat. Then, according to Jennifer's family, Bart punched Jennifer in the face. And according to Jennifer's sister Heather, Jennifer responded by telling Bart not to hit her in front of the children, to which he said, "I've never touched you. It's your word against mine." Later, after talking to a lawyer, Bart would allege that he had not punched Jennifer, that it was an accidental slap when his hand slipped. Her sister Heather was married to a man named Doug, and shortly after arriving home from this Thanksgiving from hell, Jennifer called several family members, including her father, her sister, and her brother-in-law, Doug. As Jennifer told Doug that Bart had punched her, he said he heard Bart in the background. According to Doug, Bart said, "Whatever she says is a lie. I didn't hit her. She can't prove anything. Dalton's a juvenile anyway. He can't testify." Upon realizing that Bart had abused Jennifer, her family urged her to return to Heather's house, and an hour later she did. The boys were with her too. The next day, Bart called Jennifer's father, Max. He told his father-in-law that he was filing for divorce, and that he was going to take what was his, which seemed to be code for "I'm going to take everything, including the kids." The next Monday, November 29th, Bart officially filed for divorce. He wanted the house, then worth $217,000, now estimated on Zillow to be worth over $500,000, and he also wanted full custody of the boys. And child support payments from his stay-at-home mom/part-time preschool teacher wife. It's so clear that he was preparing for battle. He wanted Jennifer to know that this divorce was going to be ugly, and that he was determined to come out on the other side victorious. 2 days later, on the morning of Wednesday, December 1st, Jennifer and Bart were both at their home. At about 6 a.m., Bart had taken a shower and was wearing only a towel. And then for some reason, he decided to go through Jennifer's purse. When Jennifer caught him rifling through her items, Bart threw the contents of her purse across the kitchen. Then, still wearing only his towel, he got into his yellow Mustang and drove away. Jennifer quickly realized that Bart had stolen her phone and personal journal. He had also taken a shotgun. Jennifer called 911 to report the situation. And during the call, she told the 911 operator that she suspected Bart was seeking evidence. She believed he was going to use any personal information he found against her in their divorce. 3 police cruisers arrived at the Corbin home only 9 minutes after Jennifer called. But 8 minutes later, they left without filing a police report. According to the authorities, that was standard operating procedure. They were checking out a potential domestic violence situation. There was no domestic violence, so they left. According to Jennifer's family, Bart drove over Jennifer's foot as he fled the driveway. But either the police didn't care about that or Jennifer didn't tell them. Later, Jennifer would refuse to go to the hospital for her injuries, so it's unclear how severe they were. That week, Jennifer was really going through it. She called her father Max and her sister Heather every single day. But not on Friday, December 3rd, 2004. That day, according to Heather, Jennifer was busy. She had gone to Dalton's evening basketball game while Bart stayed home with Dylan. He was still living in the house with Jennifer and the boys. When Jennifer and Dalton came home, Bart left. He got some drinks with friends at the Wild Wing Cafe in Swanee. Jennifer stayed home with her sons, made dinner, and put them to bed at about 10 p.m. As she tucked her eldest son into bed, Jennifer told 7-year-old Dalton that they were going to get him a haircut the next day. Then she spoke on the phone with Anita until about 12:30 a.m., and then she got into bed and went to sleep. The next day, Dalton woke up at about 7:30 in the morning. He went into his mother's room, and he saw that his mom was very clearly dead. He ran across the street to seek help from his neighbor and family friend, Kelly Como. Kelly ran to the Corbin home and immediately called 911. According to NBC News, this is a portion of that call. Kelly, my girlfriend's dead. Operator, okay, what do you mean by that? Kelly, she's been shot. Her son just ran over and got me. They live across the street from me. Operator, okay, do you think she can be helped? Kelly, no. Further in the conversation, the 911 operator spoke to Dalton. Here's an excerpt from that portion of the conversation, as provided by NBC News. Operator, okay, was there anybody home last night? Was your dad home? Dalton, yeah, he's the one who killed my mom. They were fighting for a long time. Operator, it was a long time? Dalton, yeah, it's like you're like for today and like the other and like yesterday and the day after that. Operator, so they've been fighting a lot lately. Dalton, yeah. It's so heartbreaking how sure Dalton was that his dad killed his mom. According to NBC News, Dalton did not actually witness his mother's death. He was making an assumption based on his recent experiences with his parents. After Kelly called 911, she got a hold of Jennifer's sister, Heather. Upon hearing the news of Jennifer's death, Heather described herself as, quote, hysterical. In interviews with NBC News, Heather said, "It's like somebody took the engine of a jet and put it on backwards and just sucked the air out of my lungs. Never in a million years did I ever think I would have to live my life without my sister." Next, Heather called her mom, Narda, and Narda called Jennifer's father, Max. Max was working at a car dealership when he received the news at 8:40 a.m. He promptly jumped in his vehicle and went to Jennifer's house, but he couldn't get inside. The Gwinnett County authorities wouldn't let him in. So Max went to the neighbor Kelly's house to pick up his grandsons. He felt sick and sad for his eldest grandson, Dalton. He later told journalists from the Atlanta Constitution that he knew Dalton would never forget the traumatic experience of finding his mother dead. Meanwhile, Bart was nowhere to be found. He hadn't come home after a night of drinking with his male friend and a female friend at the Wild Wing Cafe. In fact, Bart would not contact his sons for over 2 days, despite having been informed of Jennifer's death. Jennifer's sister Heather was flabbergasted by Bart's lack of response to the situation. No matter the bad blood that had festered, this was his wife, the mother of his children, and she was dead. It's unclear if Heather knew at first what Dalton had said to Kelly Como that morning. Heather later told NBC News, quote, "I don't know if there's a guideline of how a person should react when your wife has been found dead, but I would think that the initial reaction would be something along the lines of, 'Oh my God, where are my children? Oh my God, where's Jennifer? Oh my God, what happened?' There was not a peep. There was not a word." Jennifer was found in her bedroom, lying on the bed in her nightgown. She had suffered a single gunshot wound to the head, and there was a revolver tucked underneath the sheets near her hands. Also on her bed were the divorce papers. Initially, the police believed that Jennifer had died by suicide. That's what it looked like. The pressure of the divorce, the ensuing custody battle, the threat of losing everything. And Jennifer had just found out that her online lover, whom she thought was a man, was a woman. That had to be jarring. Perhaps Jennifer was at her wit's end and succumbed to suicide. But Jennifer's family balked at this explanation. They knew in their hearts that Jennifer would not have left her 2 sons alone in this world of her own will. And 4 days later, on Wednesday, December 8th, the authorities reported that Jennifer's death was now the subject of a homicide investigation. And that's because only a few days after Jennifer's death, her mother, Narda, received an unexpected phone call from someone who chose to stay anonymous. The anonymous caller informed Narda that this wasn't the first time a woman had died after being romantically involved with Bart Corbin. 14 years earlier, Bart's then-girlfriend, Dorothy Dolly Hearn, had also died by suicide in a startlingly similar fashion. Now everyone was wondering, who was Bart Corbin really? Barton Thomas Corbin was born on December 22, 1963 in Gwinnett County, Georgia, to parents Ann and Eugene. Bart was 3 minutes older than his fraternal twin brother Bradley, and they were 4 years older than the youngest brother Robert. During Bart's childhood, his family lived in the small city of Snellville, yet another Atlanta suburb. There, Bart's father worked as a military policeman, and his mother was a bank teller. In his teen years, Bart attended South Gwinnett High School. His grades were above average. He played football. Once he was cast in the school play. But that was out of ordinary for Bart. He was the kind of guy who was more sports than arts. Bart graduated from high school in 1982, and afterward he enrolled in the pre-dentistry program at the University of Georgia. While there, Bart's brother Robert said that Bart joined the UGA football team as a walk-on. According to Robert, it was competitiveness that drove Bart to do that. But, according to the University of Georgia, Bart was never on the football team, not as a walk-on or anything else. The Atlanta Constitution suggested that perhaps Bart joined after the official roster came out. Or maybe he just lied. Bart received his bachelor degree in pre-dentistry in 1987. Then he made his way to dental school at the Medical College of Georgia in Augusta. There, Bart made friends and enemies. Some knew him to be a gentleman, while others knew him to have an incredibly short fuse with an explosive temper. One classmate said that Bart threw a class project against a wall. And honestly, that's so freaking weird. This isn't elementary school, not even high school. This is a 25-year-old man behaving poorly in public amongst his academic peers. Peers who would one day soon be his professional colleagues. But according to his classmates, when Bart wasn't quick-tempered, he was hilarious. One person told the Atlanta Constitution that Bart was, quote, one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet. He's been known to embellish using the art of words you probably wouldn't use around your grandma. Now let's jump to 1989. Bart was in dental school. And that's where he met a pretty young woman named Dolly. This was 26-year-old Dorothy Carlisle Hearn. She went by Dolly. Dolly was born on July 6, 1962 in Atlanta, Georgia, to parents Barbara and Carlton. She had 2 brothers, Gilmer and Carlton Jr. Dolly was a vivacious young woman with dark hair and a gorgeous smile. According to her family, she was an outgoing woman who loved to have fun and support others. She made the people around her feel like they could accomplish anything. And maybe that's because Dolly knew she could accomplish anything. Her father was also a dentist. He started his own dental practice in Washington, Georgia, the same year that Dolly was born, 1962. And Dolly, ever the daddy's girl, was eager to follow in Dr. Carlton Sr.'s footsteps. After she graduated from dental school, she planned to return to Washington, Georgia, and she was going to work alongside her father in that same office he had founded 27 years earlier. But then she met Bart Corbin. Friends of Dolly say that she and Bart met during Dolly's 3rd year of dental school. They dated for about a year. And just like Bart's relationship with Jennifer, things between Bart and Dolly started off great. But soon, his temper revealed itself, and before long, he was downright hostile towards Dolly. Their relationship became especially tense after Dolly tried to break up with Bart. The details of that conversation aren't clear, but essentially, Bart knew Dolly wanted to leave him. He had somehow convinced her not to. But Bart was going to make Dolly pay for her trying to leave him, or at least That's what it seemed like to Dolly and others. Because starting from when Dolly attempted to end things with Bart, strange things began happening to her. Bad things. Someone broke into her apartment and destroyed her screen door in the process. Someone slashed her tires, poured paint in her gas tank, and smashed her car lights. Someone stole a package from her mailbox. Someone stole her school project. Someone put hairspray in her contact solution. And someone even stole her beloved cat Tabitha. According to a dental school classmate, Travis Hampton, it took Dolly a little while to realize that it was Bart who was actively sabotaging her life. He told NBC News, at first she thought she was just unlucky, but after a while she realized that luck had nothing to do with it. She was being targeted. Dolly filed at least 4 police reports with the Richmond County authorities regarding these incidents, so the police knew that somebody was harassing her, and they also knew that Dolly suspected it was her own boyfriend, Barton Corbin. And even though Richmond County officers verified that Bart was considered, quote, a person of real concern in the case, nothing ever came of it. Years later, Richmond County indicated that Dolly had chosen not to prosecute some of the instances she had reported. And authorities would also allege that they must have not had enough evidence to go forward with the rest. They claimed when these unfortunate things were happening to her, some kind of action would have been taken if there was any evidence to support them. But back then, the authorities were pretty notorious for not taking stalking and similar behavior seriously. And what else were they going to say? Sorry, our bad? At some point, Bart admitted to doing at least some of these things to Dolly. According to a friend, Bart confessed to Dolly that he had taken her cat Tabitha. He had dropped her off miles away from Dolly's apartment. Luckily, Dolly was able to go to that location and find Tabitha. At one point, she tried to record Bart admitting to doing some of these things, but Bart caught on quickly and refused to say anything more. According to Travis, Dolly was trying to wait Bart out. She wasn't going to break up with him because she didn't want to anger him further. After all, Bart was going to graduate in just a few months. He told the newspaper she was trying to get on his good side, hoping he would just graduate and then get out of her life. But Bart became obsessed with Dolly, so much so that she feared him. Travis said that Dolly asked to stay at his house one night because she didn't want to sleep at her house alone. Dolly's brother Gil told NBC News, I would describe him as Jekyll and Hyde. He was obviously bright. He could perform well academically. He could relate to people. He could fool a lot of people. But Bart wasn't fooling Dolly's friend Travis. Travis urged Dolly to get a gun to protect herself, but Dolly didn't buy one. She did borrow a gun from her father, though. Travis told NBC News, I know that her father had told her you need to get away from him or you're going to wind up in a dumpster one day. Suddenly, the summer break of 1990, Bart seemed to back off. Dolly's plan looked like it was working. Bart was almost done with his studies. He would move to a new town, get a job, start his career as a dentist, and Dolly would finally get some peace. Or that's what she hoped would happen. On the afternoon of Wednesday, June 6, 1990, Dolly's roommate found her body. 27-year-old Dolly was in the living room on the couch. She had died from a single gunshot wound to the right side of her head. And the gun her father had loaned her, a .38 caliber pistol, was in her lap. Dolly's roommate held her cat Tabitha as the medics rolled her body out of the apartment. Dolly appeared to have died by suicide. However, the local authorities did investigate the possibility of foul play due to the troubled nature of Bart and Dolly's relationship. They interviewed Barton Corbin twice, and he was considered a person of interest. But Bart quickly lawyered up and stopped talking to the authorities. Travis told the Atlanta Constitution that the police interviewed him very briefly about Dolly's death. It was a 20-minute phone call. Travis explained that, quote, they were pretty clearly looking at it as a suicide at the time. They said Bart was probably doing those things, but that doesn't make him a murderer. They told me they thought she was frustrated at the time and she killed herself. No one interviewed Travis's older brother, Derek Hampton. He was another dental student and a close friend of Bart's. Derek had been at Dolly's apartment on the same day that she died, and he had witnessed Dolly and Bart have a fight. On June 10, 1990, Dolly was buried in Rest Haven Cemetery in Washington, Georgia. For years after Dolly's untimely death, her family pushed local law enforcement to continue investigating her case. They felt that she could not have taken her own life. She was too excited about too many things. She was looking forward to her future, and she hadn't expressed any mental health struggles besides those caused by Bart. The Hearns hired a private investigator to look into her case. And a friend of Bart's gave some very interesting information to that PI. A man named Eric Rader said that his friend Bart had come to him very agitated. He asked Eric not to tell the investigators a very crucial detail, that Bart knew Dolly's father had lent her a gun. So Eric didn't tell the authorities. But he did tell the PI, and the PI gave that information to the Richmond County detectives. But apparently they didn't think that was important. After that, the detectives felt they didn't have definitive evidence of either suicide or homicide, according to NBC News. Despite Richmond County authorities investigating for months, the case remained open. No one was charged. And for 14 years, Dolly's case went cold. Her landlord told the Atlanta Constitution it was never in the paper, never on the radio. Nobody questioned the investigation. Most people just went on with their lives. Bart graduated from dental school 3 days after Dolly's death, and he moved on with his life too. Before an anonymous tipster told Narda and the authorities about Bart's involvement with Dolly Hearn, Jennifer's family had never heard of her, which seems a little peculiar. Wouldn't your son-in-law mention that he had had a girlfriend who had died? Wouldn't he at least tell his wife of 8 years? I feel like most relationships have that point where you go through the details of your dating history. And this seems like it would have been a big detail. And it seems like something that Jennifer would have told someone. Her father, Max, her sister, Heather, her other sister, Rogel, anyone, especially once her marriage went sour. Following Jennifer's death, this key phone call, and the realization that Dolly's death might be related, Dolly's family connected with Jennifer's family. The Hearns even attended Jennifer's funeral in solidarity. At the funeral, which was held on December 10th, 2004 at the Sugar Hill United Methodist Church, the two families hugged. Someone else unexpectedly also attended Jennifer's funeral, Barton Corbin himself. He sat in the front pew with his mother, and understandably, that really pissed off some of Jennifer's family. Only a few hours earlier, District Attorney Danny Porter had named Bart as a suspect for Jennifer's murder. And that same day, the authorities had resumed investigative efforts for Dolly Hearn's case. And yet here was Bart, like nothing had happened. He didn't speak to hardly anyone at the funeral, but as he left, he made sure to call the journalists asking him questions, vultures and scum. When Jennifer's case became a homicide investigation on December 8th, the police had tried to question Bart, but just as he had with Dolly's death, he quickly lawyered up. And based on his lawyer's advice, he refused to speak with the police, which is his legal right, even if it looks shady as hell. So the investigation continued without Bart's help. Because when the detectives really started to look at Jennifer's death, it was clear that this was not a suicide. Here are the facts. Blood dripping out of Jennifer's nose went directly down her face toward the floor, meaning she was lying down when she was shot. That suggests that she was asleep, not that she was taking her own life. There was also no gunpowder residue on Jennifer's hands, and there were no fingerprints on the gun. Also, the medical examiner determined that Jennifer had been shot in a specific area of the head, where she would have lost all of her motor functions immediately. She should have dropped the gun. Instead, the gun was tucked under the sheets with her. Even the angle of the bullet wound didn't make sense. Jennifer's arms weren't physically long enough to allow for her to place the gun on her head the way it would have had to have been placed. And Steve Como, the Corbin's friend and neighbor, had seen Bart's Chevy pickup at the Corbin house from 1:45 a.m. to 2:05 a.m., the exact time in which Jennifer might have been killed. Bart's cell phone records corroborated this information. That was exactly where he had been. As for Dolly's case, new evidence was coming to light. Crime scene photos showed blood spatters that suggested that Dolly could not have held the gun to shoot herself. Now investigators believed Dolly's body was staged after her death. And Eric Rader, that friend of Bart's who knew Bart was aware Dolly's dad had loaned her the gun, came forward. On Monday, December 13, 2004, Bart was considered the primary focus of Jennifer's investigation. On that same day, approximately 100 people gathered outside of the Corbin home in Beaufort. This was an event held by Jennifer's family to demonstrate their commitment to the case. Jennifer's sister Heather said to the press, "We want answers." Bart did not attend, but he did go back to work at his dental office that day. On Tuesday, December 14th, Bart said to a WAGA TV reporter, "I'm anxious to speak, but have not because of legal advice. The truth will come out in the end." At about noon on December 22nd, 2004, Bart was arrested for the murder of 27-year-old Dolly Hearn. It was a big to-do, publicized on television. Bart was thrown to the ground, and to top it all off, it happened on his 41st birthday. The petty in me loves this. Dolly's brother Gil said, "That was one of the best moments of our lives since the day Dolly died." At this time, the investigation for Jennifer's case was ongoing, so Bart was taken to Richmond County Jail in Augusta, Georgia, the town where he had killed Dolly. He was held without bond. 2 weeks later, he was charged with murdering 33-year-old Jennifer Corbin. Now, if Bart was given a bond amount and bailed out in Richmond County, he'd be taken directly to the Gwinnett County Jail. It doesn't appear that Bart was ever given a bond, but he was transferred to the Gwinnett Jail for legal proceedings the next month in January 2005, and on Wednesday, January 25th, Bart entered his not guilty plea. This case became high profile in the blink of an eye. CBS's 48 Hours covered it, as well as Court TV, Dateline, 2020, and numerous talk shows. It was on the front page of the Atlanta Constitution nearly every single day, which makes sense. The people involved are very attractive, which the media likes, and there is so much scandal. Affairs, lies, decades of secrets, the staging of crime scenes. You can tell how all of this would sell well to networks and publishers. Years later, in 2009, this case was even the inspiration for a made-for-TV movie starring Rob Lowe and Lauren Holly called It's Too Late to Say Goodbye. It was based on Ann Rule's book of the same name. To add fuel to the fire, Bart hired some of the most well-known criminal defense lawyers in the business, David Wolf and Bruce Harvey, the same attorneys who successfully defended the Baltimore Ravens football player Ray Lewis. The linebacker was charged with 2 murders in the year 2000, and he ended up serving 12 months probation for obstruction of justice. His football career resumed as if nothing had ever happened. So yeah, good criminal defense attorneys. The main prosecutors for the jury trial regarding Jennifer's murder were the District Attorney Danny Porter and Assistant District Attorney Charles Ross. And while they were confident that they could convince a jury to convict Bart, they knew they had one big issue: the murder weapon. Records had shown that the gun was purchased in Alabama in the 1950s, years before Bart was even born, and Bart had few, if any, ties to Alabama. So how had he gotten the gun? The prosecution needed to connect him to it. Because the rest of their evidence, while compelling, didn't mean Bart was at the scene of the crime. According to later reports, his lawyers were prepared to eviscerate the prosecution. They would argue that Jennifer and Dolly did die by suicide, and that Bart, though he had stopped by his house on the night of Jennifer's death, was not responsible. After 2 years of court delays, jury selection for the trial for the murder of Jennifer Corbin began on September 11, 2006. And at this point, the prosecution knew they had a shot, but nothing was certain, not without knowing how Bart had gotten that Alabama gun. In the middle of jury selection, the chief investigator came in. He handed the DA, Danny Porter, a note. The note said that the chief investigator needed to speak to him now, right now. There was an exclamation point and underlining. Danny looked across the room at the chief investigator, and he mouthed, "It's the gun," and Porter asked to be excused due to a development in the investigation. Jury selection was delayed, and that's when this case blew wide open. In the small town of Troy, Alabama, there was a man named Richard Wilson, and Richard knew Bart Corbin. They were friends. In early December 2004, days before Jennifer was killed, Bart had gone to Troy to meet up with his pal Richard. Bart explained to Richard that he suspected his wife Jennifer was cheating on him, and so Richard gave him a revolver. Richard himself only had the handgun because he had traded someone a used lawnmower for it. The thing was practically untraceable. Richard later claimed that he didn't know what Bart was going to use the gun for, which is weird to me because handguns are typically used for one thing in the "I think my wife is cheating" scenario. But Richard was never charged with anything here, probably due in part to the fact that he came forward. When District Attorney Danny Porter received Richard Wilson's statement, he told Bart's defense team about the murder weapon being linked to Bart, and they were devastated. Any shot Bart had was done, kaput. So on Friday, September 15th, DA Danny Porter offered the defense a plea deal. Bart would accept 2 murder charges and 2 sentences of life in prison with the possibility of parole. The sentences would run concurrently. If Bart refused, he could face the death penalty following the jury trial. He would also face charges in Augusta for Dolly's murder. Ultimately, Bart accepted the plea deal and admitted to his crimes. According to Bart's lawyers, he pled guilty to avoid a messy trial that would have exposed the sordid details of his failing marriage. Defense attorney David Wolf also stated that he believed Bart to be remorseful. In court, Jennifer's father Max stated, "The broken hearts of the Barber family, the Hearn family, and the Corbin family cannot be measured. The hearts are going to mend. I can't speak about your heart, what's going to happen to you. God might forgive you. I never will. I speak for my family when I say, I just virtually hope you burn in hell." Dolly's brother Gil said, as reported by the Savannah Morning News, "We've lived knowing that Dolly was the victim of a pointless, cowardly act of murder and believing that every path for justice was seemingly exhausted. We have always known the truth. Today we rejoice that this truth has been publicly revealed and that Dolly's name is now officially cleared." Bart's life sentence began on September 19, 2006. Today he is 59 years old. He is incarcerated in the Central State Prison in Bibb County, Georgia. He will be eligible for parole in 2024, but DA Danny Porter is confident Bart won't be considered for parole until at least 2034. In 2007, Dolly Hearn was posthumously awarded her Doctor of Dental Medicine from the Medical College of Georgia. Many of Dolly's family members and classmates attended the ceremony. Dolly's family also began a scholarship in her name. It's known as the Dolly Award. It's bestowed to a student of the Medical College of Georgia School of Dentistry each year. Jennifer's sister Heather and her husband Doug have raised Jennifer's 2 sons. Her mother Narda told NBC News, "I mend by looking into their eyes and I see their faces, and I see Jen. And I see their little hearts beating in their chests, and I know that Jen is with me. I feel that Jen is with me every day." As for Jennifer, the location of her remains are unknown. Around the time of Jennifer's funeral, Bart had demanded that he receive Jennifer's ashes. Like it or not, he was still her husband. He had more of a legal right to them than anyone else, as upsetting as that was. But Jennifer's family was able to take the candle-shaped urn containing her ashes for a period of time. When asked where those ashes went, Jennifer's dad Max said their whereabouts were unknown. He would only say, "She is in the greatest of hands." Southern Fried True Crime is hosted and produced by me, Erica Kelley. Today's episode was researched and written by Andrea Marshbank. As usual, all editorial comments are my own. Southern Fried's original music is by Rob Harrison of Gamma Radio, and the original graphic art is by Coley Horner. Today's episode was edited and mixed by Brandon Schexnayder of Southern Gothic and Erica Kelley. If you have any case suggestions, please go to my website and click on the Listener Suggestion tab. This is the best way for me to get those little-known cases y'all always send me. Please remember that I do not accept suggestions on social media private messaging. But please come join our Facebook group, Southern Fried True Crime Fans Discussion Group. where we swap recipes, worship Dolly Parton, and share memes. We do, of course, discuss true crime, not just Southern fried, but all kinds. But it is still very much a Southern lifestyle group. Our group is a safe and fun corner of Facebook, and by God, we mean it when we say no shit asses allowed. It's not just a motto, it's how we run the group. If you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to subscribe, and please tell a friend or rate and review. I'm on all large platforms like iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, Amazon, and Audible. Until next time, thanks so much for listening. Y'all take care.